As the wise Ice Spice once said, she a baddie, we're her baddie friend. And that's why I have my friend Maya on the podcast today.
Hey guys.
Hello. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about beauty standards in the African diaspora. And the reason why we're talking about this is because I'm half African American and Maya is Trinidadian.
Yeah.
And I think that there are a lot of differences in like African Caribbean culture and like beauty standards than like white Western culture or like Asian beauty standards, etc.
Exactly.
So, would you like to talk a little bit about your experience and sort of like the beauty standards that you feel like you have had to uphold?
Yeah, so I feel like one, being Caribbean, I feel like a lot of people are like super slender with like really big hips, and like it's just like a super like, I don't know, a super like sexy, sultry, like always put together look. And like also just like from where I grew up, because I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, and there are a lot of really beautiful
Ethiopian women.
yes, Ethiopian women. Raven knew
No,
exactly what I was
Ethiopian
gonna talk
baddies.
about. And it's like the same thing. It's like you have to be like super put together, like fit, slim waist, big hips, like, you know what I'm saying, just always looking good. And it's like I feel like that's really contributed to my idea of like beauty standards, just because it's like I used to be like, oh my gosh, I can't be a baddie without these things, right? And I was just like, how do I, like, I'm always like, you know, thinking about, I don't know, how I'm perceived, like if I look like I'm put together, I guess like if I look like super like fit or just like shaped well, I guess. And I'm just like, I don't feel like I should have to always think about these things like to be a baddie, you know what I'm saying?
And I feel like for traditional like white or even like I'm half Asian, so like Asian beauty standards, it's all about being like as small as you can be and like as skinny as you can be and as fair as you can be. But with like what you're describing, it's like you have to have big boobs, a small waist, big ass. You gotta have like your eyelashes done. You gotta have your hair done. You gotta have makeup on T. You have to have outfit on T. And I think that like one thing I've been noticing is that like, and especially like African American beauty standards, it's all about like the brands that you wear. Like you have to wear certain brands. Your hair has to be like top notch hair. And if it's like, no matter what it is, like you have braids, you can have your hair out, you can have, you know, a wig on, you can have whatever, but it needs to be like the best of the best, or else people are going to be like judging you.
Yeah, I feel like with like black women, it's like if you have like some sort of like hair or like clothing that isn't like cream of the crop, like top notch, they're gonna like, I don't know, see you as like, I don't know, less than, maybe even quote unquote ghetto. But it's like you have to, like, if you have wigs, you have to have the human hair. If you have like, you know, braiding hair, it has to be like the best of the best, like what gets you like the most like silky seamless look. And it's like, I don't know, the white girls be out here wearing athleisure all year round.
They can just pop up out of bed.
I know.
Brush their hair a little bit. Messy bun it. Like there's like these like, you know, in like white culture, there's these like low effort styles. Like there's low effort good styles, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Like you can wear athleisure and you can put your hair in a messy bun and you can still be looked at as beautiful, or you can still be looked at as put together. But I feel like if a black girl just like brushes her hair and walks outside, people are going to be judging her.
I know. You can't like quote unquote can't, but you can't like just like be low maintenance with your look, if that's like a thing. Yeah. Like I feel like low maintenance in the black community means like you don't do anything. Like I feel like they want you to be like one of the others. They're like, either you're a natural baddie who doesn't wear, you know, has beautiful hair just naturally, you wake up and your hair is like super big and beautiful and moisturized, or you gotta be like in the category of like wigs or like super seamless braids. But it's like there's no sort of like middle ground where you can be like medium maintenance, like wake up, you know, brush your hair down a little bit, put on a little bit of stuff, and then step outside. Like I feel like that's not enough. Like you either have to be T, or you have to be like
that natural beauty,
and
that
outwardly
natural
like
body.
obvious natural baddie, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, where's the middle ground for people who want to wear like a little makeup, just
do like
a
like
teeny wing
once in a while.
then, yeah, like, you know,
yeah,
because I don't want to be categorized as like either a wig girly or a braid girly or an athleisure girly. Like, I feel like white girls just get to be girlies, you know? Just get to be girls.
But yeah, I feel like there's this like almost internal ranking system that's like separated by category. So like mixed girls, dark-skinned black girls, light-skinned black girls, earthy black girls.
I know.
Instagram baddie black girls, like
sporty black girls,
sporty black girls. But within each of those, there's such high standards of like what the quote unquote desirable archetype is, and no matter which category you quote unquote fit in, it's impossible to reach.
I know. It's impossible
standards.
to be like the top of the top. Like, none of us are gonna be like looking like scissors and day up in here, but like every time like there's a new like baddie on the scene, like then the standards go up, the price goes up, and it's like once Ice Spice hits the scene, the standards went up. Once Tyler hit the scene,
oh my gosh,
oh my god,
when Tyler hit the scene, I started crying internally because I was like, Tyler and I, like, I feel like we would fall into, like, the same quote-unquote category. Like, we both don't wear that much makeup. We both have, like, the same hair texture.
Yeah,
we both
true.
are, like, brown skin.
You would.
And I'm like...
She's our age too. I'm like,
yeah,
bro,
she's our age
let
too.
her
I'm
come
like,
to our university.
I'm like, Tyler would eat me up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I'm done competing. Like, I'm
done competing. I do not want to be in this competition.
No,
Tyler's
that's what I'm saying. Like, none of us want to be in this competition, but I feel like we're all, once we hit of age, like, black women are automatically, like, enrolled into this competition, kind of like the military. Like, it's just like all of a sudden we're all, like, ready to be perceived by everyone else based on, like, how we look, how we present ourselves, how we speak. And it's like, it's a bit exhausting if you pay attention to it. Like, I feel like there was a point in time where I kind of like let go and I kind of ignored those things. I was like, okay, I'm done trying to be a baddie. I was like around 21, like trying to figure out how to get on like the wig wave. I just gave up. Once I couldn't figure it out, I couldn't do it myself. I was like, nope, I'm just going to have to be as bad as I can with these braids, and that's it. And I feel like that's just how it should be. Like, you should just find your own niche and just look and feel your best within that, instead of trying to like become like someone else.
Yeah
because that makes it extra exhausting. Like, you know, I feel like I see like on TikTok like these videos that are like how to get Tyler's waist, and I'm like, oh my gosh, none of us
like, no one can get Tyler's waist. Have you seen Tyler's waist? Oh my.
Like, what? And it's like to pressure yourself into thinking, oh my gosh, I need Tyler's waist by June. Oh my gosh, no.
That's not about to happen.
Yeah.
Sorry, baby girls. But it's not about to happen.
No, literally. And I feel like that's the type of pressure black women have, where it's like, if you're not put together, you're kind of just seen as like, you're just kind of tossed aside or like seen as ghetto or like undesirable. So you're just like always trying to keep yourself super put together, super good looking all the time. And it's like, other races don't have to look super good all the time.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay, I'm about to say something controversial. So you know how like some black men have this thing where they only like white girls, right? And I always used to get like, it used to be this like complex where it was like, you could have no offense, a mid-ass white girl. But for a black woman to be perceived as attractive, she has to be like a 10 out of 10, which I always thought was so fucking great. I would see like the most beautiful black woman, and a black man would still choose a white woman because she's white. No other reason, just because he's white.
Yeah.
And then you ask like these men like, oh, like, why do you like white girls? And they're like, because black girls are blah blah blah,
or to this,
or to
like,
this, or to this, or like,
I didn't ask you about that.
Like, I didn't ask you about that question. I asked, why do you like Sarah? Why do you like Emily?
No, literally.
Why do you?
And their answer is always like putting down someone else, even if it's not even just black women. It's like they're putting down someone else, so it makes me feel like they don't really like them. It's more just like I don't know, proof of status or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Really weird to see out here. I hope that kind of dies out in 2024, but
I really hope so.
Who knows?
I mean, I think that like with the rise of like all of these like beautiful black women, like Ice Spice and Tyla and like all of these like R&B artists and rappers that are coming up, I think that it's like increasing the desire and like the overall perception of black women is like getting better, like the idea that like we are beautiful, and you know, like people are being exposed more to black women in just like general media. And so I hope that sort of starts to shift people's like perceptions.
Yeah, I feel that too, but also like we're like in the state of Maryland, and only recently have I thought about how like how slow that progression is going, even if it seems fast. Just because,
Mm.
oh my gosh, did you see like the what is it, the NBA draft, and like
Mm-hmm.
how like a lot of these how a lot of these black men will be the only like three black people in the room will be the guy and then his mom and dad, and then everyone else in the room is like white, or like the white girlfriend and their family will be there, and it's
Mm.
like, oh my gosh. And I keep seeing this discourse that's like, oh my gosh, I thought we were past this whole like NFL player and a NBA player having like a white girlfriend trope. And
Mm.
almost every video I saw, it was like a white girl. It wasn't even like other races. It was
Really?
just like white. Always a white girlfriend.
Like, I wonder why that is. Like, is it seen like as a sign of social status, or
I don't know.
like?
Or do they really love them? Like, but like my thing is,
But
even if you do
the
love them, how do you keep
probabilities are
finding
just
them?
crazy.
Yeah, like if it's like giving like high school sweetheart, then it's like, okay, we're not gonna be mad at
Yeah.
you for having a high school
Yeah. No.
sweetheart that's
No.
white. But like, if it's like, you know, girlfriend of like 1 year, half a year, it's like, how do you keep stumbling into these women and like picking them once you get to this level? Like, I rarely see like NBA players with like
Mm.
black girlfriends, or even other race. Like Travis Kelsey having a black girlfriend before Taylor Swift was like this big thing too. Like it was
Mm.
like almost like unheard of or like new or something.
Mm.
And I'm just like, so that makes me think about how like fast the progression might seem in like places like Maryland where it's super diverse, or like
Yeah.
just East Coast, I guess, but like in
In the
reality,
general sense, yeah.
yeah, it's still looking slow out here, and I feel like by 2024 we got to be done with that. Like AI starting to have feelings. Like we got to be past that stage of like, I don't know, white is right. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just really
And
awkward.
you know, like, as a person who's like mixed, I think like I felt really lucky because all of my siblings are also mixed, and you know, my mom, an Asian woman, ended up with a black man. And so she never judged who we dated. She never like cared about like the cultures that we dated and any of this, right? So growing up, like, all of my siblings have dated like anyone under the sun, like any race you could think of. And so then when it came to me, I never felt like I had to choose a black man. I never felt like I had to choose a Filipino guy. It was, oh, I could just choose who treated me well. I could choose who loved me. But I feel like there's like a pressure in like the African American community, or I think like just in general, like a pressure from family to choose someone who is the same race as you to marry. And I personally have never gotten that, but like I think it's just because, you know, I grew up in a super blended family, like a bunch of cultures. But I feel like for African American women, there's this like pressure to like choose an African American man, even if African American men do not treat you the way that you should be treated, or like they don't respect you. There's this idea that you have to like stick with them through the struggle. You have to stick with them through things. And I think that that is shown a lot in professional sports. Like a guy has like a black girlfriend up until he reaches that like big status, and then he breaks up with her, gets right with a white woman.
I know.
And I think like, that's like crazy. I think that like people in general, I think that people make being the same culture as someone way bigger of a deal than it needs to be. Like, people can understand other people's cultures,
right?
Because it's a very common argument that like, oh, I Raven should date a Filipino boy because no one else can understand Filipino culture. What? That does not make any sense. Like, to me, that is like the craziest argument. Yeah, you might not speak the same language, but like the world is such a beautiful and diverse place, and so many cultures have been shared across time, and people want to learn about other cultures. Like, people want to understand your culture, and so you don't necessarily need to be with a black man if you're a black woman, or a white man if you're a white woman.
No, absolutely not. And I feel like this culture, especially in the US, is only getting more and more mixed, because I saw this graph. It was like in the New York Times or something, and it was like main age of people who are of this culture. Most white people apparently are 58. Like, that's the mean age of white people. Yes, they're all old. And it's like black people, I think it was 27. And it was really interesting. I saw like mixed race on the graph. Why was it 3? So by the time, like in 20
That's
years,
crazy.
a lot of the people in the US, like, it's going to be a surge of like mixed people in the US. And I saw that and I was like, 3? What do you mean most of the mixed people in this country are 3?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
I felt so shocked because I thought that like me being mixed was like not that big of a deal. Because to me it's like, you know, all my family is mixed. So many Filipinos I know who have come to America obviously have mixed kids, because that's just how, you know, that works. But then like when I went to college, so many people are just one race. One race. And I was like, this might sound so stupid, but like to me, I was like, huh? Like I was like, why are there not more like mixed people about? Because to me, my whole life was just like, full of mixed people.
Yeah, but it's like it's a thing. Like everyone's like, you gotta marry this race. Like you gotta marry this. Some people put it on a thing of like, don't be a sellout, depending on what race you are. Or, like don't be like, don't come to America and just become Americanized. Like like all those movies where it's like, it'll be like an Indian person's always falling in love with the white person. Asian person's always falling in love with the white guy. It's like, but in reality, like their families don't want that because that's always what it is in the media. Like freaking, I don't know, like The Office. Like Kelly was so obsessed with like only white people. Like it was such a thing. And it's like even like in Never Have I Ever, like Davy falls in love with this white person. So like, it's like, why is it always a white person,
Yeah.
But it's like,
I want to see like more representation in media of like mixed couples where neither person is white.
I know, literally, please
like,
bring that
because
back.
It's like that. First of all, that's how I came to be, you know what I mean? And
right.
I feel like I'm a pretty cool person,
Yeah.
So it would be cool to see people who, I think it's, and, as you said, like the median age of mixed people is like 3, right? So it's going to be popping up more and more. Like, once you have one mixed person, every person that they have a baby with.
Yeah, that's true.
It's going to be a mixed person.
That's what I'm saying.
So I think like it's only fair to have more representation of that and show how compatible different cultures can be.
Yes, because why do they only want people to be compatible with white?
And show that there's desirability between races where there's no white person involved. Like
yeah, that's really important.
That Asian men can like black women, and that black women can like Asian men, or that like black women can like Hispanic men, or like Hispanic. I think that there should be representation that like you don't have to choose your race or white people. Like white people are not the default option, and I don't know why white people are the default option in media and like in popular culture, or like
I think they're just like I don't know, saying that they're super digestible or like easy to get along with because they don't have their own culture. You're just like imposing it on them or something. I don't know, but it's like Black people could be receptive of other cultures too. Like I don't know why that's like a thing. Or like Asian people can also be receptive of other cultures as long as it like aligns with like other aspects of their culture. Like obviously there's like a culture that's rooted in religion. Like there's some things they can't do with you. Like the Muslim people can't eat bacon with you, but like they can be receptive to other things. Like I don't know, like they just make it so that only white people are like these sponges that like soak up all these other cultures, and like like there's so many people I know who are not attracted to white people. So that mixed trope where it's like always another white person doesn't even make sense in my head, to be honest.
Yeah, and I just think it like perpetuates this like, I don't know, it makes people feel like white people are their only option outside of their race. Yeah. And that like, I think like especially for like black women, there's this whole like, oh, I need a man who feeds me pasta and lobster. Like not only white people will feed you pasta and lobster, guys. You could have a lot of other cuisines.
No, literally.
Like black, like. And I think it forwards this idea that, like, black women are not desirable. But, like, black women are very desirable.
Yeah. And to bring it back to, like, black women, like, even I really would hope that, like, if there were more tropes of, like, mixed race couples that didn't include white people at all, I would really like to see the black woman, like, the black person in the relationship be a woman. Like,
exactly.
Because I feel like even in the cases where it's like, oh, pure, you don't have a white person here, or, like, it's two races that aren't white, the black person will always be a guy.
Yeah, it's like a mixed guy like Dominic Fike, or like a dark skinned tall ass black man who is hot as shit.
Or like Wes from Wes from How to Get Away with Murder though too. Like sometimes they'll just be light skinned too, and just like kind of like be less of a contrast to like the other race. But I'm just like, I don't know, I'd rather see like a dark skin, like bring Issa Rae on the set, you know what I'm saying? Like have some, I don't know, brown guy or something fall in love with her. Actually, I feel like there was a movie where that happened, but like like bring us more of that.
Yeah, just like more. Yeah, I think more of that.
Yeah, because I feel like the world needs to know that black women are desirable in a way that's like beautiful and healthy to watch.
Exactly. Like I want something that's like just like a rom-com, like a beautiful, healthy relationship. They can go through their own struggles, but like I think that I want to see more representation where like a black woman is just like loved. Like loved, treated gently, treated like in that like gentle, loving way. Because I think that like as black girls, there's this like hypersexualization of us ever since we're little. Like once we hit puberty, we start getting catcalled. Yeah. And there's this idea of like us trying to maintain not being fast. The sexualization of like young black girls and it's like disgusting. And I think that to change the tide, you have to show that like Black women, we are just as like gentle as every other race, and we deserve to be treated tenderly, and like we don't have to go through this whole struggle thing.
Yeah.
Like, not like every
struggle
relation,
love is not love.
You know, it doesn't have to be this like toxic situation. Like Black women do not have to end up in these toxic situations all the time.
I know, and I feel like they're like there's always like this trope that like Black women are like either like super duper beautiful, and obviously there's like select women in that category, Tyla, Georgia Smith, Thames. Like you have to present yourself in a very specific and exact way to be put into that category. But if you're not, you're just tossed into the like possibly sexualized, maybe like used for a bit, you know, like the whole like, what is the term, like the disposable Black girlfriend trope, where it's like what you were saying, like where the football player will like date a Black girl up until a certain point, and then they're like, wait a minute, I kind of really love this random white girl I just met. That's like a trope in like movies, like the disposable Black girlfriend trope, because I feel like every time like there's a Black girlfriend involved in something, they have to break up with that guy, and that guy falls in love with some white girl, and then the Black girlfriend has to like kind of just stay around and be like, let's preserve our friendship, and they have to stay and like deal with like some other mistreatment. And it's like, can the Black woman just be loved just for being a Black woman?
Like, we don't need to go through this struggle all the time. Like,
I know.
I get it. We're quote unquote strong, but I don't want to be strong all the time.
Me neither. I'm not actually one of God's strongest soldiers.
No.
I know. And in terms of like the hypersexualization, I feel like that also contributes to like the idea that people always think we're trying to get off on being fast, or like that Black women are always like ready and up for either a challenge or something sexual. Because why is it that when you're 8 years old and you're painting your nails red, all of a sudden you're sending a signal? Like, you're 8. Like, what type of signal would I want to send anybody other than like, I need to signal you to get me a Happy Meal from McDonald's?
Yeah,
like, I'm 8 years old.
Yeah, like give me a Capri Sun. That's the type of signal I'm trying to send.
That's what I'm saying. Like, let's go get popsicles or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want. Why would an 8-year-old want that? And just for like painting their nails red, like, you know. And I feel like that like is so damaging, because that just like lets everybody think that it's acceptable to perceive Black women as fast. Because if you can be perceived as fast as an 8-year-old, imagine like coming to college and being 18, and you're just like, you know, being yourself as a Black woman who is becoming her own version of what she wants to be, but like everyone else is putting, you know, a different sort of lens on you, and their eyes are different on you just because you're Black, like, and it kind of distorts your like experience, I feel like.
And I feel like there's this like hypercritical lens upon the decisions that like Black women make, right? So this like goes past like looks or whatever, but it's like if we are even a little bit assertive, then we're angry and we're hostile, and so then we have to like be more gentle. But if we're gonna get ran over, because the world is a hard place. You have to like be assertive. You have to like stick up for what you believe in,
right? Or
else you're just gonna get exploited in this world. But then if we do that, then we're hostile. And it's like I think that there's like this idea that we don't get to be as messy as other people. We don't get to be as silly. We don't have as much freedom to like make mistakes, and we don't have as much like freedom to like just be silly, have fun, do stupid shit when we're young, because that reputation has much more weight. Like how people perceive us has like really, really affects us.
Yeah, and I feel like you like if you're like really assertive and like, I don't know, just stand on business, you get this certain trope. And then if you're too gentle, you get like another trope. Like I feel like, okay, I saw this statistic that was like Black female lawyers, like about 40% of them are married. So it's like, I feel like Black women who are lawyers feel like, oh my gosh, now I have to scramble for a husband, because it's like people already have this lens on me that, oh, I'm very smart, but there's also
you're
like
also really assertive,
very rigid,
lawyer,
very assertive, and like they don't want to deal with that. And that really made me sad, because I saw like a lot of Black lawyers like talking about like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know this was a thing. Like I didn't know people perceived us as that. I thought it was just like celebration that like Black female lawyers are like, you know, on the rise, but there's always a downside to that. So I feel like even if you're super smart and head is on the swivel and you make like the best decisions for your life all the time,
you're still quote
like,
unquote lose.
Yeah, and you still might not be desirable because you know, you're super rigid. But let you be too gentle or too like, you know, go with the wind with your life, and then now people are perceiving you as like easy to get up on, like, you know, super like malleable and like easy to control, and it's like, where can we win? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, it's always like something. So it's like,
yeah,
having to like always want to be like striking a balance in your life and like focusing on what other people can nitpick is just going to make you nitpick at yourself. And like, be super critical of yourself and then be critical of what other people are thinking of you in a certain space. It's just so like annoying to think about.
Let's talk about colorism.
Girl, you know how I feel about this.
Go ahead, girl.
Oh my gosh, I feel like it's so crazy.
Mya is a beautiful, dark-skinned black woman. Just letting you guys know. So, in case you guys can't see her,
I know you
guys
can't see me,
her,
but that's
what
the
she looks
description
like.
she said. I feel like being dark is a really interesting experience, is what I'll say, because I feel like with dark-skinned women in particular, you have to curate yourself to be someone's type. So like, obviously, like growing up, like I heard a lot of people, especially around that like 2014, 2016 era, everybody's type was like a light-skinned girl. And I didn't really feel any type of way about that because I was like, I'm not really interested in anyone, so I'm like, I don't care. But like, I feel like after a while I was like, dang, like every time I'd see like a dark-skinned woman on the scene who is being like talked about in like a really positive light, or like, oh, there's this dark-skinned girl who's actually super beautiful, I'll like look them up on Instagram or something, and they'll either have like the teeniest waist and biggest tips of all time, or they'll be like oiled up and like modeling or something, and it's like, wait a minute, where are just like the normal dark-skinned girls? Just like how y'all love the normal light-skinned girls. Like I always thought that there was like had to be like a gimmick that they had going on, like oh my gosh, there were a few like dark-skinned girls that I would follow back in like 2016. And I remember they would get all this praise and they'd be like, oh my God, this girl's so beautiful. And I remember they had like the longest 3C hair ever, hair down to their waist. And it's like, that's not that quote unquote normal for people to see on a dark skinned woman. So they just thought, oh my God, she's so like exotic or like so different from like other dark skinned women. So I was like, oh my gosh, dark skinned women always have to have some sort of gimmick going on to be like perceived as like beautiful. And I was like, I don't have any of those gimmicks going on. So they're just going to have to take me as I am. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to grow 3C hair down to my waist by the time I, get to college. That's what I'm thinking in my head at that time. So I was like, they're just going to have to accept me for who I am. Now, luckily, right when I graduated high school, there was a shift.
Changing.
Yes, because Afrobeats started getting on the scene. People started outwardly like being proud of like being African at the time. Because I feel like there was a period of time where people were like not as like accepting of it, or not as willing to tell people, hey, I'm African, or I'm from this part of Africa. But then right when I graduated high school, everybody was so proud of being African. And I'm not African, I'm Caribbean, but I feel like once you're dark, you're just grouped in with Africans, quote unquote, in your grade level. So once a lot of people started like being open about being African and Afrobeat started being very popular amongst everyone, now it's okay to be dark skinned, and that was a shift for me. So like getting to college, I was like, oh my gosh, like everybody is like quote unquote okay with it. Not that it's something that people need to be okay with, like that's your skin color, but like I was just like, oh shoot, like nobody's like being like super weird about this. And it's like I had to like develop my own like confidence in myself at that time, because it's like nowhere in my white middle school was I gonna be building up my confidence. Nowhere in like my high school, even though it was like predominantly black at my high school, like obviously there were still those like undertones of like, oh, like everyone needs to be like light skin or like be like this. Like now it's different. So luckily for me, right when I got to college, things changed. But also there were still undertones of things. Like people thought that like it was quote unquote, I guess like easier to talk to dark skinned girls if you found them attractive, because they're thinking like, oh, no one else is talking to them vibes. Like I feel like at the beginning, they're just like, oh, like I have this dark skinned girl on my roster, but like she's definitely gonna stay there or something like that, like as if like we can't up and leave for somebody else, like what? But it's like that whole thing where it's like it was like a thing for them not to be like super desired upon, at least at the beginning of college. Now after COVID is a wholly different thing.
I feel like so many beauty standards changed during COVID because everyone was on TikTok, and because everyone was on TikTok, you saw every type of person on TikTok.
Exactly.
I was exposed to like people that I had like never ever seen in real life, and like how I started styling myself changed dramatically because of COVID and because of TikTok. And everyone had crazy glow ups too during COVID, because everyone was inside. Everyone was just planning on how they could come back hotter and better than ever.
Chloe Ting was on a huge rise
Ting
at that time. Everyone was inside getting their abs right, this and that. So it's like I feel like, I don't know, a lot of standards did change after COVID, and I feel like people really started to move different. Like I feel like so many people thought I was like attractive, like women, men, like they would just like, a lot of people would just be like, oh my gosh, you're so pretty. And I'm like, I really hadn't heard that a lot like growing up.
Really?
Yeah, just because like, well, one, I didn't really put like a lot of like effort into my appearance, and that's my thing. Like I feel like because I put more effort into my appearance after COVID, it's like, oh my god, a dark skinned girl with like really pretty something, like I don't know, lip gloss and this. I love lip gloss. I always have lip gloss on.
She does.
But it's like it's like I feel like you always have to like put yourself together, and it's always like a this then that thing. Like I feel like if I'm dark but then I don't do much to myself, like if I just wear my hair exactly how it comes out of my head, like no sort of like, you know, eco style or anything, or like, you know, I don't like, I don't know, dress a certain way, it wouldn't be the same, you know? And I feel like being dark really is a this or that thing. Like it's like you're dark but you have all your shit together, and you wear the exact shade of this that makes you look the most beautiful, the exact hairstyle that makes you look the most beautiful. You have to have everything together. Like the stars have to all align.
Yeah. And I definitely
Like,
agree that like the beauty standards are harder like when you're a dark skinned black woman versus when you're brown skin or even light skin. Like
yeah.
there's layers to everything.
There are, because I feel like with light skins it's so interesting. Like I feel like the whole like what's the like the thick light skin trope, where light skin girls can be like, I don't even want to use the word like thick or like quote unquote pudgy, but it's like cute on them. But I feel like if you're like on the bigger end as a dark skinned woman, it's not as cute, and they don't they don't think it's as like, oh my god, like perfect girlfriend to cuddle with in the winter. It's more like, oh my gosh, you're fat, and like they treat you in a very different way.
Yeah, very different way.
So it's like I feel like there's layers to that too, where it's like less and less is acceptable if you're dark. Like let me tell you, skinny dark skinned girls right now on the ups. Like
they are on the ups.
Skinny dark skinned women who are like model-esque or like have like a very nice silhouette, everybody loves, you know? Which is great, because I can't even say that everyone loved them 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's like there's still more that needs to be unpacked, because let you be dark and fat, or let you be dark and have like stronger or bigger features. And now it's more like, oh, I don't know, like da da da. But it's like light skinned women can have strong features. And I feel like I told my sister this a few years ago. I was like, I feel like if some dark, like Saweetie, for example, Saweetie's nose is very strong in my opinion. Like it's not super like delicate and like,
you know, she's Filipino and black too.
Really?
Yeah.
No, that actually
and I think
makes perfect
she's also
sense.
Partially another type of Asian, but I don't remember which. But she's Filipino and black, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Your sister?
Hey, sweetie. Hey, queen.
But her nose is very strong to me. And I was telling my sisters, I was like, I feel like Saweetie is very beautiful to me, and to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I feel like if she was darker, or like if a darker woman had that nose, it actually wouldn't even be seen as
attractive.
Beautiful, because it's strong. And I feel like her being light skinned, like, not covers it up, but like people don't notice it as much, because people just see light skin and they're just like super beautiful. But like I thought about it, I was like, her nose is very strong. Same with what's her name, Sydney McLaughlin, that track runner for the US. She's so beautiful, but I was thinking about it, I was like, her jaw is like very strong, and I sometimes feel like if a dark skinned woman had that, it wouldn't be as
it would be like taken as masculine rather than beautiful
exactly.
and unique.
Exactly. But here's my thing. I think it looks beautiful on anyone, to be honest. Because I don't care if Sydney McLaughlin has a masculine, like, look. She's a runner. Like, who am I to be nitpicking at something? Exactly. No, literally. And I'm like, but I still think that's super beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, she's a runner. Like, who am I to judge on, like, how her face is structured? But I still think it's beautiful. But I feel like it would always be, like, either nitpicked upon or, like, in consideration if it was on a dark-skinned woman.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And sad, because it's like we can't control our features, or like sometimes even weight is like fluctuating and it's like uncontrollable at times, but it's like it's always a fight.
Yeah,
you know,
you can't really like affect how your body fat distributes, or like just how you're built in general.
No, literally.
You know what I mean? So
girl, trust I've tried, and that is not a thing.
And I honestly, that was like one of my biggest fears when I was like recovering, was that I was so terrified of what I would look like, because I developed my eating disorder right when I started puberty. So I never finished puberty. So I was like,
oh my goodness,
I was like a really late bloomer. I like had my period when I was like 14.
Really?
And I developed my eating disorder when I was like 15. So I hadn't gone through puberty yet.
Yeah, you didn't finish.
And so then I went through like delayed onset puberty. So I like, when I got my period back, like I think it was like 18 when I got my period back.
Period back?
Yeah, I lost it for like 3 or 4 years. I didn't have my period at all. So then when I got it back and I started going through like hormone changes, I was like, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
I was so scared of like, what would I look like? Because I'm like very hyper aware of like how society views women. And like, you know, at the time it was like the Kylie Jenner era, and like Kim Kardashian had a BBL, and I was like, well, if my body doesn't fit the beauty standard, then are people going to judge me because I gained weight? Right? So it was like, I used to be skinny, and skinny was a beauty standard on its own. But then, you know, as I started to gain weight and my body wanted to sit at a little bit higher of a weight, I was like, if my body doesn't distribute the way that society values, or like the way that society finds acceptable, will I be seen as ugly?
Oh my gosh.
And like that was like a huge fear of mine, because like a lot of what I did was I really wanted to feel valued, and I really wanted to feel like I was in control. And it was like, you can't control how your body's gonna look like, and there was no way for me to know,
especially
like I had,
after that,
like I had no measurement of what I would look like, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I gained the weight,
and you're high, period.
and things worked out, I guess, in my favor, but
those are genuine concerns.
But I was so terrified, and that's why like I delayed recovery for so long, because I was so scared. Like, what if I gain weight and people start fat shaming me?
Right.
Like, what if I gain weight and nobody wants me? I was already scared that, because like I was really small and nobody wanted me anyway, but at least I was like small and I fit.
Yeah, and you fit some sort of standard.
I fit some beauty, like that, you know, Western European beauty standard of being super skinny. But then if I gained weight and then I started being fat shamed, like, it was really hard for me to like cope with that uncertainty.
Yeah.
But then I just realized, like, hey, like, your life quality is going to improve drastically. You know what I mean?
You had to like, weigh those.
You know, I was weighing my pros and cons.
Yeah.
And when I was, like, I experienced a lot of, like, thoughts of, like, there was, like, a lot of colorism growing up, being, like, half Filipina and half black, because, like, Filipinos really value, like, lightness. Like, it's all about proximity to, like, Eastern skin colors, like Koreans, Chinese people, like Japanese people, like having like their skin color and being super fair. And so obviously I'm not fair. And also like I have been like, I think I fall in like a racially ambiguous sort of bucket, but a lot of people do identify me as like black, or they would think I'm like, a lot of people say that they think I'm Ethiopian or something. And so I have more black leaning features than I do Asian leaning features. And so within like being mixed and being Blasian, there's like a sliding scale of like, oh, the more beautiful people are ones that look more Asian, and the less beautiful mixed people are the people who look more black.
I see.
And so it was sort of like me being like, well, first of all, I'm not like fair. I'm not a light-skinned Blasian person. 2, I have more black features. And so it's like, where do I, like, how do people perceive me, and like,
or like what beauty standard?
Yeah, like what beauty standard
do I follow?
Yeah, like what beauty standard do I fall into, or like what is my place in this world? And so it's like, I'm not about to say like, oh, I couldn't fit in with the black people, I couldn't fit in with the Asian people, because I could fit in with both, you know.
Right.
But it was more like, you know, when I was like younger, there was no one really that looked like me. And there was no representation of like Blasian people. That's true. And for most of my life, like the category people would put me in is, oh, she's exotic. Like I always like, I would go to the Philippines and people would tell me, oh, you look really exotic. You could be on like TV because you have that exotic mixed look, or like And it felt almost like I was like an animal. Yeah, like you you know what I mean?
Like an experiment. Yeah, like it's just like,
an
oh,
animal.
thank you.
An experiment. Or like black people would compliment my skin tone, but then Filipino people would be like, use this whitening cream.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
having two beauty standards that are like so different too.
Yes, that was the issue, right? Because like with like white and black, mixed white and black people, it's very, very common to see mixed white and black people, right? So they have their own standard. It's like the light-skinned black people standard,
and a lot of them are in fame. Like I feel like the only Blasian I know who's famous is like Ruby Rose. Like
like there's a few of them, but like Sweetie, for example, is Blasian.
Oh yeah,
Janae Aiko is Blasian. Her is Blasian. Like there's a lot of Blasian people, but like that's very recent. So like
that's true. They're all really recent.
Yeah. So like growing up, it was like, you have these two very opposing beauty standards from two opposite sides of the world. Yeah. And like, I was raised by only my Filipina mother, but I lived in Chicago in the South Side. So
oh my gosh.
You know?
When you say it like that.
You know, and like I was in this huge Filipino community, but like every single day, all I saw was black people, right? So it's like, what beauty standard would I try to follow? And, you know, my mom never taught me how to do my hair, do braids or whatever, so I don't know anything about that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
True.
And so I would just, like, wear my hair, or I would, like, straighten it because it was easier and my mom didn't know what to do with it. But then I could never really become, like, I didn't know about, like, how to wear a wig. I didn't know about how to, like, do any of, like, the typical African-American beauty standards. So it's, like, which one should I, like, follow? But then celebrities, like, her and Sweetie and stuff came up, so then I just had my own category now.
Yeah, you're like,
but that's very recent.
Yeah, it is so recent, like post-COVID almost.
Yeah, and so
because I didn't even know her was bleached until very recent. I think, like, since the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I was like, damn.
And like growing up, I went to a predominantly black elementary school, and there was like a lot of colorism there. The boys in like the 3rd grade made a list of like the cutest girls in the grade, and the top 3 girls were all of us were mixed, but the 2 above me, I was like 3rd, the 2 above me were light-skinned black and white girls.
No, literally.
And I was like, okay, so my skin color's
You're like, well, that's proof enough for me.
I was like, okay, that's cool.
Oh my gosh. No, literally, it's so funny, like, seeing, like, all of the tiers, like, even within, like, communities, like, even in the mixed community, like, obviously, like, most mixed people are aware that, like, they're probably more desirable than, like, just black girls, like, to most people. But then even within, it's like, okay, well, now let's nitpick even more. Let's go to color, like, color of your skin. Let's go to featureism. Let's go to hair type. Like, I don't know.
Hair type, features, of all those things. And I think that's, like, what I struggle with a lot. Is because, like, I knew I had I was very privileged in the sense that, like, being more, quote-unquote, ambiguous gave me a lot of, like, people didn't necessarily have a stereotype to put upon me because they didn't know what I was.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, people would just be like, oh, she's like that cute, like, Blasian girl. Or, like, she's just that, like, little mixed girl or whatever. Yeah. So they didn't necessarily have, like, any stereotypes. So I wasn't expected to be, like, this, like, super strong black woman. Or, like, I wasn't seen as aggressive because I looked more ambiguous. And so people didn't necessarily have those, like, racial stereotypes for me. But I dealt a lot with, like, not feeling beautiful because of the very opposing beauty standards in each of the communities I was a part of. And I did feel accepted. Like, I felt accepted with, like, Asian people, and I felt accepted with black people, but it was sort of like, I'll never be the pinnacle of beauty in either culture because they're so incongruent in the sense of, like, what they expect you to look like. And I think that, like, there was also, like, I felt like there was a hierarchy in terms of, like, who was the most desirable, like, mixed person, right? So, like, white and black people were seen as, like, super desirable. Or, like, the Asians. Like, if you're mixed with white, it's more desirable than if you're, like, mixed with black, quote unquote. Or, like, you know, like, people who are mixed with, like, with 2 non-white cultures, it's, like, those people are not as, quote unquote, desirable. You know, there was, like, a lot of, like, nuances within that I felt like... It was, like, weird because I obviously knew I had, like, a lot of privilege, so I didn't want to be, like, I am confused. Like, I'm just confused about, like, like, my place. Because I didn't want to be, like, I wasn't accepted by black people and I wasn't accepted by Asian people. Like, I didn't want to fall into that stereotype. And I also was not the, like, I would never put, like, Blasian in my bio.
Oh,
like,
I
would and, like, back in 2016, they used to have, like, Blasian fan pages where they would have pictures of, like, Blasian babies. And I was like, this is the most cringy thing I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's so weird.
Or, like, people used to be, like, their names used to be, like, Harajuku Kayla. And then you'd press their page and they'd be like, I'm half Kenyan and half Japanese. Okay. So I was, like, very scared of, like, ever being perceived as that type of Blasian person. Oh, I see.
So I just sort of stayed away from ever addressing my insecurities about that because I was like, let me just shut the fuck up.
No, see, you were right back then.
Move on.
Only because being Blasian was so, like, oh my god.
It was so cringy.
Remember those jokes that used to be like, okay, if you at a restaurant, there's a vegan, a Blasian, and, like, a something else, and they're like, who's telling you about their identity first? I used to be like, bro. I used to be like, honestly, the vegan's telling you first, unless the Blasian is, like, I don't know, from Maryland. I feel like there were certain places that definitely hyped it up more. Like, I don't know. That was so funny, though. Like, Blasians used to be just ripping it out of their mouth. It was so funny.
I really didn't want to
You're
be
different,
that person,
babe. You're different. You're not one of them. Like, That used to kill me. But it's like, that's because that, like, being exotic used to be so, like, in the beauty standards. Because I feel like white and black has always been, like, the mix that people wanted. But, like, if you were, like, other things, they could, like, I don't know,
it was like a whole new world.
Yeah, they
didn't know what to do with themselves.
I didn't know these could mix and look so beautiful. Okay, like I didn't know I was paint, but I didn't know I was like fucking red and blue.
I didn't know I was MS Paint.
Yeah, okay. Like I didn't know I was, you know, red and blue make purple, and you're like, oh my god, so beautiful. Like it's just, it was a whole thing. But like, I don't know. Because the U.S. is getting so much more mixed though, I think that's good in the sense that like people are starting to see that all cultures can contribute to beauty, like
exactly.
And it's like, even with like Rapunzel, like being Indian, like a lot of people are obviously,
you know, there's a whole thing that's like made up, right? There's no actual real like live Rapunzel. Someone started that on Twitter and people have been running with it into the ground, giving Avantika like death threats when there's not actually a live action Rapunzel coming out. Like,
see, all this outrage for what?
No, literally, I keep on seeing TikToks being like, never would I ever want to see, like, not my Rapunzel. What happened to white representation in the media? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. How is she going to be blonde? Bitch, there's things called wigs. You think they're going to find you think they're going to find an actor with, like, 50-foot long hair naturally?
That's what I'm saying. And plus, does she have to be blonde? Like, I don't know.
And also, you know, a lot of wigs are Indian, like, Indian
true,
hair.
Indian
so
hair.
it's going to look natural, you know what I mean? Like, she would eat that shit up. She's so beautiful, by the way.
I know.
But also, that outrage, totally fake. And racism. Like, that's just racism.
Same with Ariel, girl. I feel like they were so hard on Halle for what, being black and being our Ariel. Like, I don't know.
And look what happened when they actually kept with the race. When Emma Watson was Belle, that shit was ass.
Was it
she
really?
could not sing for shit. She could not sing for shit. The Brandy version back in the 90s, she ate with that.
She ate.
And I will forever say that is a way better interpretation of... No, that was Cinderella. But yeah.
No,
Brandy ate up with Cinderella.
Yeah, no.
And Emma Watson sucked with Belle. So it doesn't matter if the person is white or not.
I'm glad it was only Belle, to be honest. Because what? Belle wasn't my favorite princess, thank goodness. But what? That brings me like all the way full circle to like white mediocrity also. Because not to trigger the like Swifties or anything, but like I'm not a hater of Taylor Swift, so please don't come and argue with me. But I will say, those who are saying that she's our generation's Michael Jackson, no. I don't think so. Like, I don't know. I feel like black artists have to be like so like so talented.
You literally have to be Beyonce.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, let's talk about Beyonce, because a lot of people want to compare Beyonce and Taylor Swift. Let's go.
I know.
Let's go toe for toe, tat for tat. Okay. First of all, vocals. Come on now.
Yeah. Let's be real. I think Taylor Swift's vocals aren't...
And we could just stop there. That's it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the main thing that matters.
I don't need Swifties to argue with me, to be honest.
But, like, let's talk about, you know, like, performance and vocals and stuff like that. Like, come on, guys.
And energy at the shows, because I feel like...
Let's be for real.
Beyonce's energy is unmatched. That's all I have to say.
BFFR. Have you seen Beyonce on the ground, fucking singing, fucking thrusting up in the air? Have you seen her running around? You know,
I'm obsessed with that.
Deja Vu, when she performed with Jay-Z. In like 2007. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Wasn't that the one where she was on the ground with the curly wig?
Yeah. I can't go anywhere.
Yes. Sorry guys, you had to. But like, yeah. And that's how I feel. Like, I don't know. Black women, like, super talented all around, super strong, even though we don't want to be all the time. But it's like, we'll always be the blueprint. And that's
on period.
Yeah. That'll never end also, so.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about another thing. Okay. In the past few years, when I've started dating, I primarily date people that are not white or black. I date a lot of people in between that. Right? I have dated both white and black people, just as a disclaimer, but you know what I mean. Like, I usually date people in the middle, like people who are like Asian, people who are Hispanic, stuff like that. Mixed people, stuff like that. Those are usually the type of people I date. And something that I've noticed is that a lot of guys have... I am the first black woman they have ever talked to. Ever. And I just think, okay. So, like, this can be seen as both a good and a bad thing. A good thing in the sense that, like, you know, with the rise of, like, stars like Tyler of blah, 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 black women have become more desirable, quote unquote,
amongst like a lot of,
you know,
races,
a bunch, amidst a bunch of like other races. But I feel like mixed women are being used as a intermediate point between guys who are still kind of racist, but they not racist, but like guys that are still kind of afraid of black women, but
they're not fully there,
but think black women are beautiful and want to try quote unquote black women.
Yeah.
Is okay. And I think that like it's like kind of a weird thing to deal with, right? Because I feel like in a way I'm being fetishized because you know, those types of people who are coming up in media tend to look like me, like that mixed girl category of black and some Asian or whatever. But at the same time, why don't you just talk to black women? Why are you so afraid to talk to black women? And I know you find them beautiful because so many guys think that Megan Thee Stallion is the hottest woman that's ever walked the earth. Yep. And so many people love Sweetie. And so many people love, like, all of these black women. So why don't you just go talk to a black woman?
Here's what I'll say. So, to start that conversation off, this is totally different actually from dating, but you know the Challengers movie with Zendaya coming up?
Oh my god, I want to watch it so bad.
I know, me too. But like they mentioned, the directors were like, oh, we wanted a black woman to be the main character because there are so many black tennis players who have made it very far within the game. Serena and Venus Williams, all that stuff. But then somebody brought it up and they're like, then why didn't you cast a fully black woman? Because Serena and Venus...
Zendaya?
Yeah. And they were saying how it's like super easy and digestible by all races for some reason for
Zendaya
mixed
to
people,
be the,
especially Zendaya, because
she is like
she's the blueprint for and also everyone loves Zendaya. Like
she's
even
so hot.
Beyonce's mom was like, she's so elegant and put together and funny and witty. Like Zendaya is I feel like most beautiful, unproblematic actress there is in terms like besides black and white and everything, like just in general. So I feel like they were like, she's like the easiest person to cast, but at the same time, that was a good question. Why not a fully black woman? And I feel like that can be applied to this dating scene as well, where it's like they're getting there, but they're not all the way there in terms of like, oh, I want a black woman. Like they're not like fully on board. I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or just like a social currency thing where it's like, I think it's easier to tell your homeboys when you go back, like, oh, look at this girl and she looks mixed, rather than, oh, look at this girl and she's like,
and I think a lot of people still have like stereotypes of like what black women are like in relationships, and you know, black women have high standards. I do gotta say that, like, black women have really high standards.
Really
you know
high
what I mean?
standards.
And I was talking to my mom about it, and I was talking to like my brother about it separately, and like my brother was like saying some bullshit about like, oh, because you act like a Filipina girl, it's more digestible. But it does kind of make sense because, you know, my mom is the one who raised me. Like I do.
So you don't want to get too offended by it, but you're just kind of like, wait.
Yeah, like I do live by like, you know, I do act quite Filipina, obviously, but it's like, it feels like almost like they're trying to put down black women and say that black women act completely differently, or that like, oh, they wouldn't like the personality of a black woman. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
like I don't get that. And I think that like it feels like a lot of the reason why guys might want someone like me is because they still have these like prejudices against fully black women, and so they try to get the quote-unquote next best thing, which is like a mixed girl who looks more black but I act more Asian in terms of like my values or whatever. And so it's really weird and it feels really icky, and I don't know how to tell whether or not I'm being fetishized, or like I don't know how to tell whether or not I'm just like, oh, I'm their like stepping stone in their journey of,
are they halfway
of finally dating a black woman.
It's interesting when you said that, because it's like, I don't know, it feels like they think that like the black woman quote unquote demeanor or stereotype just erases once another race is present like in your DNA. Like it's just like, I feel like I know a lot of mixed girls who quote unquote act black, and a lot of mixed girls who are mixed with black who don't act black. So it's not like the black just fully erases out, or like the black culture just isn't received well by mixed people and they just don't interact with that side of them. It's more like they have a choice if they want to be like super like ingrained and involved in their black side or not. And it's weird because it sounds like they are treating you as more of like, or not treating you, but treating the mixed girls they date for that purpose, if that is a thing, they're treating it as more like a experimental thing.
Like, granted,
not with
like,
you, yeah, but like,
yeah, like, granted, like, no man has ever like broken up with me and then gone to like a fully black woman or like a white one, you know, like, it's never been like that. But it takes pause when there's a pattern. Like, I take pause when it's like, why have like all the men I've talked to never talked to a black girl before? Like, what is going on?
And it's like, even if they were using, quote unquote, I don't think they're ever using you as a stepping stone, but let's say they're dating a mixed girl and they're like, oh, I'm just seeing if I like black girls. Why do they never date a fully black girl after? Especially if they're dating you, because... But they do, though. Oh, so you're doing good for them, huh?
For my community.
Period. Good, because I'm like, wait, especially, girl, one thing about you is that you bring, like, a lot of energy, a lot of charisma, so it's like, I don't think they're gonna, like, after you be like, oh, I hate black girls, they're never, like, please. But, like, I feel like the point is that, like, is it a stepping stone thing or a halfway point, or is it just a desirability, physical thing for them? Like, they just because a lot of,
and why is it so recent? Like, this has happened like very recently. Like, before this was never the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's the social media. I think it's social media, and I think it's all the new like singers that are coming up.
Yeah, everyone coming out right now is mixed.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, I feel like this is like a trend that's trending, and I just happen to be in that little category for that trend. But once that trend goes away, my desirability goes away. So
no, don't say that.
And that's all right with me.
Oh my gosh, please, I don't believe that. Your desirability will all still be there.
No, it doesn't matter.
I just feel like, it just flows with the times, with social media, with like who's on the rise, and it's just like... And
that's why I feel like no one can ever let their head get too big, because beauty standards change.
So
because just a few years ago, light-skinned black men were on the top, the tippy top. Back in 2016, 2015,
light-skinned
but
were on
now
top.
Dark-skinned black men with dreads are on top.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think there's ever going to be a shift like that again. Like, I don't think it's ever going to shift back in favor for light-skinned men, because everyone's like,
so you can't let your head get too big.
Absolutely
not. Or else you're going to be
Because I'm sure light-skinned men are confused
by that random...
by, like, licking your lips and stuff. That used to be the thing back then.
Like,
now it's like...
mama.
I know. Not come here, mamas. That's just not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. If a man does that in front of me, I think I might puke. So it's like, I don't know, times change, trends change, but it also makes me wonder, when is black beauty going to be just accepted outside of just like a trend line, you know? Like, I feel like we have to reach that point before we can ever speak about any sort of like equality in the preference field, I feel like. Because blackness is a trend, and it's always trending, it's always shifting. And it's like, one year everyone's like, you know, wigs are on top, nose piercings are in, but then the next year, oh, I don't know, nobody likes women with nose piercings because you look like it's like, oh my gosh, things just change all the time.
Yeah.
Everyone's so critical of everything, and things change year by year, and it's like, I want to reach a point where like black women aren't just like an experimental phase or like a trend, and it's just like existing, you know?
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, you know, you have to separate your self-worth from your desirability.
Like within a society?
Your desirability within society and with the people that you're attracted to. You know what I mean? Because, you know, trends are going to change, and you have to be, like, happy with yourself, even if people don't want you, quote unquote. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? And also, like, looks are not everything, obviously.
That's true, too.
Because another thing is, like, personality. I think personality is, like, the most important thing ever. Because, like, people could be beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, but if, like, you're not funny, and, like, if you have, like, no ambition and blah, 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 none of these beauty standards matter. You know what I mean?
That's
true. You could be the finest, you could be Jhené Aiko. Because Jhené Aiko, she is, like, a goddess. No. You could be Kehlani. Because
Kehlani's beautiful.
Me and Kehlani... I saw Kehlani performed at Hopkins last year. Oh,
I remember that concert.
You know, Kehlani
changed my whole view.
If you ever listen to this podcast, you're fine as hell. Anyways, you could be Kehlani, but if Kehlani is a terrible person, which I'm sure she's not,
absolutely not.
If Kehlani was a terrible person and had like no personality or whatever, you know, she would still be pulling because she's Kehlani, but like, it would be less so.
Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like the standard actually needs to shift and just be personality. Oh my God. Like, I feel like looks should play less of a role because looks
fade.
They do fade, and also it changes even within a region. Like, I could be totally ugly if I went to the South. Who knows? Like,
no. Like, also, go where you're like watered. You know what I mean? I think that this is like one of my like biggest things. You know, I don't think that people should feel obligated to date like one type of person, no matter what. I think that like you should go where you're watered. If you find that like all these people are treating you dirty and that there's a pattern between these people, do not keep talking to these people because you feel like you're obligated to talk to them.
Absolutely.
Or just because you find them hot. There's many, many people out here in this world. And you can find many people attractive. And so go where you're watered. You deserve to like be in like a loving, gentle relationship. You deserve to be treated well. Like, you know, you shouldn't be begging for the bare minimum. You know, I think like, for example, athletes. I have seen women get done dirty.
Real
dirty by athletes that look like frogs. Dirty.
But like frogs?
Yeah. I don't know why, but like, it's because I look at face a lot. So all these men, like, you know, they might be super tall and built, but yeah, it's giving like questionable in the face. But
you like a pretty boy. I feel like they don't got them.
I like myself a pretty man. And so it's like, but I'm like, girl, I get that you like that he's athletic, but if you notice pattern after pattern, like I'm consistently being treated dirty by these men, you gotta look at yourself and be like, what do I prioritize? Do I prioritize like the way that someone looks or like their status, or like do I prioritize like how they treat me and how they make me feel?
Absolutely.
And you should go to where you're watered, and you know, don't limit yourself because you have these prejudices against like other people and you don't think that they want you. I swear, Black women are super desirable.
Everywhere.
You know, don't pay attention to that like one study 10 years ago that showed that like Black women were swiped on the least, because that's not how the world works these days, baby girl.
And I'm sure that's a lie now.
Yeah, girl. Because girl, I don't know.
Times are different.
Times are different.
We're not in, you know, 1900s anymore. You know, I feel like times are changing. Technology's exposing a lot of people to like different looks, different aesthetics and such. So I feel like things are starting to even out.
Yeah.
Only starting.
But like, yeah, don't feel like because you don't necessarily fit the beauty standards of your culture that no one's gonna find you attractive, because that's definitely not the case. There's someone for everyone.
Absolutely.
And learn to love yourself, guys.
Absolutely. Love yourself. That'll take you to where you need to be.
No, for real. Yeah. And I think like, you know, once I stopped centering like my desirability to like men and women, then like all of a sudden people that I really liked started coming up to me.
Yes.
But when you're really desperate for it, then you don't get the men that you want.
Or when you're pandering for it.
Yeah.
Like
just be yourself. Like literally. Yeah. Wear what you want. Dress how you want. Do your makeup how you want. If you want to wear nails, wear nails. If you don't. If you want to wear your hair a certain way, wear it. If you don't. And you will attract the people that you are supposed to find.
Absolutely. And, you're the most beautiful when you're like genuine.
Oh, no, that's so real. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mya, for coming on this episode.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll see you guys next week.
Bye.